Imagine pouring your heart into a project for 6 months, stitching every hope you had for the future into a wedding dress, only to realize that the dress wasn't for a celebration, it was for your own funeral. That was me. I was the perfect daughter, the silent observer, the piece on the chessboard that never moved unless told. But the moment I overheard the man I was destined to marry plotting to erase me from the picture, just to ignite a conflict, the obedient girl vanished. I didn't freeze. I didn't beg. I ran. I ran straight to the threshold of the one man powerful enough to shield me. What began as a terrifying escape evolved into something far greater, a discovery that I wasn't just a pawn to be sacrificed. I was the player who could flip the board. This isn't a fairy tale about rescue. It's a story about walking through the flames and refusing to burn. It's about realizing that your true worth isn't in your lineage or your marriage alliance, but in the empire you can build with your own intelligence. If you love stories where the underdog outsmarts the masters, where resilience turns into power, and where trust is earned in the face of betrayal, you are in the right place. Before we unravel the secrets of my past and the power of my future, make sure you hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications. I want to hear from you in the comments. When life backs you into a corner, do you hide or do you fight back? Let's begin. I was sprinting up the imposing stone steps of Damon Thorne's estate, my breath coming in jagged gasps, the heavy train of my gown dragging through the dust of the city streets. The security team didn't flinch. They moved with synchronized precision, forming an impenetrable wall of dark suits and sheer physical intimidation, blocking my path instantly. I should have been frozen by the sheer scale of the threat, but the pounding of my heart was drowned out by a colder memory from hours earlier, Julian's voice drifting from the study, calm and detached, saying, "Make it look like an accident. Blame it on Thorne." I halted, hands raised in surrender, the intricate beadwork of my bodice shimmering under the harsh perimeter lights. I looked like a chaotic vision, a bride unraveling at the seams, the picture of desperation. The massive entrance doors parted, and a silence heavier than the night air settled over the courtyard. Damon Thorne emerged, looking less like a businessman and more like a force of nature. He was imposing, dressed in a tailored charcoal suit that emphasized his authority, his eyes sharp and devoid of sympathy. He didn't look at his security detail. He looked at me, dismantling my appearance with a gaze that ignored the panic and sought the logic beneath. "Elena Rossi," he said, his voice a deep resonance that seemed to vibrate through the stone. "Vittorio's golden opportunity, arriving on my doorstep in a ruined masterpiece. This is a reckless move. They're going to get rid of me and frame you for it," I blurted out, the words rushing past my lips, stripping away years of poise and training. I knew I sounded frantic, shivering in the biting wind, but I forced myself to lock eyes with him because looking away meant accepting my fate. Julian Vane isn't interested in a merger. He wants the Rossi territory and he wants your assets, and the most efficient way to get both is to stage my accident, plant evidence pointing to your organization, and let my father's rage destroy everything you've built. One of the guards shifted, but Damon remained still, his expression unreadable. "Why come to me?" he asked, descending the stairs with slow, deliberate steps. "Why not run to your father?" "Because Vittorio won't see the truth," I countered, fear sharpening into clarity. "I'm an investment to him, the final piece of a negotiation he spent a year perfecting. If I go to him with a story about a plot I overheard, he'll think I'm just overwhelmed, a nervous bride getting cold feet. He'll return me to the altar, apologize to Julian for the drama, and Julian will just accelerate his timeline." Damon stopped a few feet above me, close enough that I could sense the aura of command he projected. He studied me not with pity, but with a sudden sparking interest, as if I were a complex problem he hadn't anticipated. "Astute," he noted, the word hanging in the air. "You realized you were expendable." I realized I was a target. I corrected, my breathing finally steadying. "And you have the most to lose. If I disappear, my father won't wait for answers. He'll launch a total offensive. You'll be fighting a war on 2 fronts while Julian capitalizes on the chaos." Damon stared at me for a long, intense moment, the atmosphere charged with silent calculation, before he signaled his team. "Stand down," he ordered, his focus never leaving me. "Escort her to the secure wing and bring her water before she collapses." As the adrenaline crashed and my legs felt heavy, he caught my arm, his grip steady and reassuring. "You're going to tell me every detail, Elena, and if I find out this is a deception, I will personally ensure you are returned to the situation you just fled." The next hour passed in a haze of secure corridors and the scent of polished mahogany. I sat in his office, a space of shadows and glass overlooking the city grid, reciting the conversation I'd heard with absolute clarity. I detailed the timeline, the specific mention of a vehicle malfunction, and the arrogance in Julian's tone, his certainty that I was too conditioned to ever rebel. Damon listened without interrupting, analyzing the data, assessing the threat like a master chess player. "You have a credibility issue," he stated finally, leaning against his desk. "It's your word against Julian's. Vittorio will need more than a frightened daughter's testimony to turn on his chosen successor." "I can find the evidence," I said, a newfound resolve strengthening my voice. "I'm a designer. My world is built on details, patterns, inconsistencies, the slightest flaw in the fabric. I see things others ignore." Damon raised an eyebrow, a silent challenge, so I stood and approached the surveillance photos spread across his desk. "This associate," I pointed to a figure in the background of a gala photo. "He's wearing a watch worth more than his car, but his suit is ill-fitting. That's a contradiction. He's trying to blend in, but he doesn't belong, and look who he's observing." I traced a line of sight to one of Julian's key advisors. "He's not there for security, he's a contact. Julian is communicating outside the approved channels." Damon looked from the photo to me, a slow, appreciative expression forming. "That's Nico, one of my logistics managers. If Julian is meeting him, there is a breach in my operation." For the next 3 days, I didn't see the sun. I worked inside Damon's command center, analyzing financial logs, travel itineraries, and communication records, applying the same meticulous focus I used for Couture to the complex web of corporate sabotage. It was empowering. For the first time, I wasn't being told to smile and remain silent. I was being asked for my analysis. I found the anomaly, a series of unauthorized consulting payments that aligned perfectly with Nico's travel dates to neutral zones. When I presented the complete picture to Damon, he didn't dismiss me. He looked at me with a fierce intensity. "We have him," he said. "Now we ensure your father sees the reality." The confrontation was arranged at a private venue near the harbor, a place of low light and high stakes. I entered with Damon's security detail, wearing a simple dark dress, stripped of the bridal expectations. My father was waiting, his face a mask of stern disapproval, Julian seated confidently beside him. When I entered, Julian's expression shifted from shock to a practiced mask of relief. "Elena, we were terrified," he exclaimed, standing up. "Stay back," Damon's voice commanded, cutting through the room as he stepped into the light. My father stood, his presence radiating anger. "You have moments to explain why my daughter is with you, Thorne, before I take action." "I'm here because Julian planned to remove me," I stated, my voice clear and unwavering. I placed the dossier on the table. "He's been paying Nico to plant false data against Damon. He intended to stage my accident next week." Julian laughed, a nervous, hollow sound. "Cassian, really, she's overwhelmed. The pressure of the merger, she's imagining plots." My father looked at me, searching for the weakness he expected. Instead, he saw a woman standing firm, armed with undeniable facts. "Review the file, Papa," I said quietly. "Check the dates. Follow the money." Vittorio opened the folder. The silence in the room was suffocating as he scanned the pages, his eyes tracking the illicit transfers and the annotated photos. When he finally looked up, his expression was cold and hard. He turned to Julian. "You thought I wouldn't notice." He whispered, the quiet tone far more dangerous than a shout. "You thought I would be so blinded by loss I wouldn't audit the accounts." Julian stood up, knocking his chair back. "It is a setup. Thorne is manipulating her." But the denial was futile. Damon signaled, and his security team brought Nico forward. The man looked defeated. His head hung low, the picture of a man caught in his own web. "He confessed everything this morning," Damon said calmly. The fallout was swift. My father's security moved in, escorting Julian and his co-conspirator out to face justice within the organization's laws. I turned away, watching the harbor lights flicker. When the room cleared, my father adjusted his cuffs, his demeanor shifting back to business. "You did well, Elena. You protected the family interests." He looked at me with a nod. "Return home. We will manage the public narrative. In time, we will find a suitable new arrangement." I stared at him, feeling the familiar walls closing in. "No," I said. My father paused. "Excuse me." I said no, I repeated, moving to stand beside Damon. "I'm not returning to be used as leverage again. I'm not an asset you can trade for stability." I took a deep breath, feeling the weight of the decision. "I'm staying with Damon. We have a partnership. I will run my design firm, and I will use my network to provide intelligence for both of you. But I do it on my terms, as his ally." My father scoffed. "You think you can just choose this? He is a dangerous competitor, Elena. And I'm the one who saw the betrayal you missed," I countered. "I'm choosing the competitor who respects my insight." Damon stepped closer, his presence a silent vow of support. "She isn't asking for permission, Vittorio. She is informing you of the new reality. Unless you wish to lose your most valuable observer and start a conflict you cannot sustain." My father looked between us, calculating the shift in influence. Finally, he nodded, a sharp, decisive motion. "Do not make me regret this trust, daughter. I won't, I promised." The months that followed were a whirlwind of innovation and strategy. I launched my atelier in the city center, a sanctuary of elegance where the influential came for fashion and stayed for the atmosphere. I listened, weaving their conversations into insights that kept Damon and my father ahead of their rivals. But the true partnership thrived in the quiet hours at Damon's headquarters, where we analyzed trends and threats together, equals in every sense. One evening, we were en route to a site inspection, the city lights streaming past. I was reviewing the security feed on a tablet when I noticed a rhythmic flickering in a street lamp outside our destination. "Halt the vehicle," I ordered. Damon signaled the driver instantly. "Report." "The light?" I pointed. "It's not a malfunction, it's a pattern. Someone is signaling an arrival." Damon watched for a second, then issued immediate commands. We reversed course just as a structural failure caused the warehouse entrance to collapse in a cloud of dust and debris. A trap sprung too late. We watched from a safe distance, his hand gripping mine. "You saw it," he said, respect coloring his tone. "We saw it," I corrected. Partners. 2 years later, I stood on the terrace of our home, the city sprawling below us. My atelier was a success, my voice respected, and the fear that had once defined me was gone. Damon joined me, standing close, looking out at the skyline. "You know," he said softly, "you never finished that wedding dress." I smiled, leaning into the railing. "That dress was for a different person. I've evolved." He turned to me, his expression serious, the moonlight reflecting in his eyes. He produced a ring box, not a symbol of ownership, but a sleek, modern design representing strength. "Then wear this," he said, "not as a contract, but as a choice. Build this future with me, Elena. No trades, no leverage, just us." I looked at the man who had valued the strategist over the status, the partner who had offered me a platform instead of a cage. "Yes," I whispered, and we stood together, looking out over a world we had reshaped. I had run from a ceremony that felt like an end, only to find a beginning I had built myself. And I would never look back.